5, 4, 3, 2.
Let's do this.
This is Pro Wrestling UnCut. With your host, Cole Dawson.
Biggest icon in wrestling.
Die Hard is not a Christmas movie.
Let's do this.
And welcome to another exciting episode of Pro Wrestling UnCut. I am your host, Cole Dawson, and with me today, as always, our favorite, our mascot, DJ Barbecue. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good. I'm not like as furry as the mascot, but let me tell you, I can give a good hug.
Well, hugs are important. The women like that kind of stuff. But today, okay, we got to start out today. We got to settle a few things. We had some stuff. There's some wrestling news. Let's start off with a good note before we get into things and see if this runs off the rails a little bit. The exciting news of the day. Friend of the show, Eddie fucking Kingston. Officially announced today, signed a contract with AEW. It's great news for us. He absolutely killed his he killed it with Cody. Great promo, great match, hard hitting, all the good stuff, and he earned himself a contract. I'm really happy for him. I'm hoping to hear from him here sometime in the next day or two. And I hope his knee is doing well. I hope that this works out great for him. And I hope they don't make him a fucking heel jobber like every other big monster they've signed for the last 2 months. How are you feeling about our boy Eddie Kingston, officially an AEW wrestler?
Well, there's a difference between like being a mark out fan and like marking out and then just losing your shit. And I would have to say that myself and my son lost their shit, because that is one of the coolest newses that I've ever heard. And yes, I said newses, ladies and gentlemen. Eddie mother effing Kingston, hell yeah, clank 2 beers together. He is signed, sealed, and delivered, like Cole, Mr. Dawson said, for AEW.
Yeah, pretty excited about that. Man, AEW has an absolutely stacked heel potential heel roster between MJF, who cut a fantastic promo this week, had the state of wrestling address, so to speak. That was phenomenal. It was a great segment. I like the heel heat where he told the lady to smile because she looks prettier when she smiles. It was like one of the douchiest things you could do in 2020. I liked that he ran down Moxley. So right there we have MJF, Eddie Kingston, Brian Cage with Taz. We have the Inner Circle. Like, this is a completely stacked heel roster. I'm hoping that FTR is going to settle in and be, real tag team heels. I hope they're not going to keep them, being this babyface tweener bullshit thing they're doing. And like, for me, we've talked about this a lot on the pod. We've talked about it a lot, just in our side conversations. But heels pay the bills, man. Heels are what draw money.
The money.
Damn straight. Like, it's one thing to like somebody, but it's another thing to want to see your guy kick the ever-loving shit out of somebody else. So, like, we gotta have someone to root against. It's not just that I want to see Cody do well. It's like, I need to see Cody beat the crap out of MJF. It gives you something to really care about and get invested in. So AEW is doing all the right things. I hope that this is going to be the start of something special, and the start of them really growing their audience. I really don't feel that they're that far off from being able to beat Monday Night Raw or SmackDown in the ratings. So what are you looking forward to most with AEW going forward with their heel factory?
The one thing that I'm looking forward to, because I got to be honest, like it was kind of like life imitating art, art imitating life with MJF's promo that he cut for the State of the AEW address. We've seen this tons of times in other promotions over the decades of where they have some type of like political type of gimmicks, if you want to add that gimmick structure, because it's elections year. But I would have to say that MJF promo was up there with the Bob Backlund promo because it just kind of felt real and it kind of felt like it fit. I really want to see AEW build on that. Let's be honest. Like, I'll say it. I'm an Eddie Kingston mark right now because, like, I think he could make that company more real because what he did in a 2-minute promo, other companies, we won't say names, couldn't do it in a 2-month period to help their promo out for their match.
Right.
So
I mean, yeah, that's it. I mean, he set the internet on fire. He set the wrestling industry on fire. He cut a great promo. He had a match with Cody that was, I mean, even some of the, let's say, AEW detractors were basically saying this was a perfect segment. I mean, those same old school type people didn't like the thumbtack so much, but other than that, everybody loved this. I mean, I can't find too many people that have anything negative to say about the segment in the match, but I know because you wanted to get under my skin that you went out and found some hate tweets about Eddie Kingston. So I'm going to go ahead and let you read them, and then I can cut some promos on these motherfuckers.
Well, let's just say if they hate those tacks when Eddie did it, I wonder what they really say about the one that Darby Allin did, because he basically thrashed Starks' back. Let's just
God,
keep
that
it
was
real on that.
Stupid and dangerous.
Yeah. Slice and dice. Primo Slice. Okay, so I'm friends with this individual, but I just wanted to say this just to get you riled up because we are talking about ratings. So here's my reporting right here with the live mic. They said there's nothing against the guy. But
no. Hold on. You got to give credit. You got to give credit if we're going to read these quotes. You got to tell me, at least you got to give me their at or whatever the hell you're going to give me.
All right. I am just busting their balls like, the old New Yorkers would say, joking around. But here you go. So at Mrs. Jericho Y2J, that's a Jericho-holic fan, says nothing against this guy, but the AEW wrestling marks are going to put over any indie jobber you put on the show. Is that Tony Khan going to hire them all to pop his fan base?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I get where you're going. Okay. This person, I assume, is a she, since she's Miss Jericho, whatever the hell.
Yes.
Okay.
What I understood.
Well, this lady watched Warhorse and his pitiful piss poor outing against Cody and decided that every single one of these indie guys is a job guy, and she doesn't realize that Eddie Kingston had a run on top at Impact with Conan and the double LAX gimmicks, and they don't realize that Eddie Kingston is a badass who's held titles all over the world, who's been to Japan, who's done all this stuff, who also in his spare time does mixed martial arts and has real fights, kickboxing and whatnot. The dude is a legit badass who legit came from the streets, who came up in a rough neighborhood. Like, all that stuff in his promo, that's all 100% legit. This dude was an iron worker, got a job right out of high school, and then decided he wanted to be a pro wrestler. And he's been scratching and clawing his whole life now, the last 18 years, to make it this far in the business. Deserves everything he gets. Will beat the ever-loving shit out of all the fucking Young Bucks and all those little flippy-floppy guys. Eddie Kingston is a legit badass. This lady can go fuck herself. Next.
Okay, so this isn't really a long, little phrase, but, it's reported that, welcome to the team, Mad King. Eddie Kingston is all elite. And the next person goes, who?
And which who insignificant peon meat flop tweeted this? Who?
Mr. Robert Wilson on Facebook.
Okay, Robert Wilson, who the fuck are you? Nobody's heard of you. Why are you clout chasing on Twitter, on the twatter? Go with your twat machine and go twatter yourself and get the hell out of here. Eddie Kingston is a bigger star than you'll ever be, Robert J. Brown. Get the hell out of here.
All right, now on Facebook. Chris
okay.
Haynes or Hans or whatever, it's Hanes.
Yes, he's so unknown we don't even know his last name.
Yes. Horrible signing.
Yes. Who'd you ever beat, Chris Haynes? Get the hell out of here with your Haynes looper.
And let's just put it in here. This is an AEW Facebook page, and these guys are hating on an AEW signing. Okay. Oh gosh, this one chokes me up. What has he ever done in pro wrestling? Chris Thomas.
What have you ever done in pro wrestling, Chris Thomas? Besides watch it and add these useless fucking opinions to fucking social media. Get the hell out of here, bro. Eddie Kingston is a badass. That's what he's done. He's done it for 18 years, beat the shit out of everybody. Go watch his matches with Chris Hero. Watch them headbutt the shit out of each other. My goodness. My goodness, haters. Who else? But he's probably excited about Zack fucking Ryder, fucking J-Bro, who hasn't won a match in 10 years.
We'll get to that one later. But anyway, I can't say this guy's last name, but his first name is Tim. I'm a illiterate, so you gotta, bear with me here. But Tim goes and says, just another jobber. He ain't gonna do anything. AEW is trash.
Yeah, see, this guy, it just sounds like a guy who already hates AEW is going to shit on anything they do anyway, because he thinks that what's going on fucking WWE on the main roster is professional wrestling. If you like professional wrestling and you don't like Eddie Kingston, then you don't like professional wrestling and you're a lying piece of shit. Get the hell out of here. This dude is the realest dude in the profession of wrestling. He is, oh my God, he is ratings galore. This dude is going to raise AEW to another level. All right, I'm done with meat flops and peons unless you got one more really good one.
One more. This guy really needs to get a good old shellacking over the air. Gary Melvin says, we're signing in pro wrestling history. AEW is trash, and also the signees that they sign are trash.
It wasn't even the worst signing in wrestling this week. It wasn't even AEW's worst signing in wrestling this week.
Well,
my goodness.
Fan, so.
Okay. Worst signing in history. How about the Boogeyman? How about the Great Khali? How about the fucking Giant Gonzalez by WCW and WWF? Get the hell out of here, man. Why are you going to hate on talented dudes that can actually cut a real promo and look like they're actually having a fight when the bell rings? Get the fuck out of here. You don't know shit about the business. Go watch Pokemon.
Not to insult people in radio, but he really does have a face for radio. I'm just saying, like, that's kind of an insult. I take that back. I apologize to anybody that's on a podcast or in radio, because that really insulted him.
Well, there's a reason that we're on a podcast and not on a TV station, bud. It's right? Okay.
Well, see, I got the good looks. I just don't have the good facial hair like you do. So.
Oh yeah.
That's the only problem I have.
All right, so that's enough shitting on Eddie Kingston. Okay, that's good enough. Fuck all these people. Get the hell out of here. Eddie Kingston, you're my boy. I love you, man. I'm so happy for you. Now, on to our issue this week. We had a little bit of argument going on amongst ourselves. It spilled over into the social medias. We were twatting each other, and you are excited and think that it's a great deal that AEW signed Matt Cardona, the former Zack Ryder. I'm going to go ahead and let you try to explain to the people why you think this is a good deal before I completely destroy your life.
Okay. You try. Keyword try. All right. So here we go. All right. So Zack Ryder comes out on Wednesday, beat up the Dark Order, gives the Rough Riders, not once, not twice, but a good old shellacking to them. We have somebody that follows us, that fans, and we kind of butt heads all over the way. We have difference of opinion. We had a little beef, but we've squashed it. And they usually are people who are like, you know, who the frickin' Zack Ryder? Who cares? Like, you know, he's just, who the hell cares? Well, I was like, a lot of fans with money care because, you know, they like him, they buy his merchandise, they watch him, people cheer for him. And he goes, where's the cheddar been for the last 12 years? Oh, yeah, in catering. So I reply, there was a lot of cheddar coming in. He was furloughed, so he had a choice if he wanted to come back or not in the pandemic, because most of them were all furloughed. He chose to make, you know, go to other avenues. I said he's a huge draw for AEW. Meanwhile, that's going on. I get freaking roasted on Twitter. Like a big deal. People are acting like they got a huge star, LOL, and then they start, you know, giving me gifts and laughing at me, blah, blah, blah. He's not going to draw anything. He hasn't done anything since 2011. Yeah, dude, got a lot of work to do. Marks are all of a sudden fans of the woo. Anyway, so basically people are saying that he's not a huge draw. For AEW standards, yes, he's a good, huge draw because he's well known around the world. He does sell merchandise. He does have positive reaction to fans. We can't base everything on just an old man's because he made himself and got himself literally over a fence. But, you know, watch the show's popularity. I guarantee you he has enough people that will bring eyes to the product and you're falling asleep.
I guarantee you. They're not going to do a rating any better than what they've done since the pandemic. I guarantee you they're never going to get over the 800 to 850,000 mark because of Zack Ryder. I swear to God, you have two things conflated. You have somebody that people know who he is confused with big star. Like Goldberg is a big star. Brock Lesnar is a big star. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a big star. They're over. Matt Cardona is the Brooklyn Brawler, Iron Mike Sharp, Barry Horowitz. That's who he is. Like, WCW back in the 90s would not have had a big press release and nobody would have been excited if they signed freaking Barry Horowitz. It would not have helped them in the ratings war. It would not have done anything. It would not move the needle. Now, I will stipulate that for next week alone, there's the average viewership is about 1.5 to 1.6 million ish, somewhere in there, maybe 1.4 to 1.5 million. So every week there's been 600,000 people that watch NXT. There's been 600,000 people that watch AEW. Now there's about 250, maybe 300,000 other viewers that go back and forth. Sometimes, most weeks they kind of split it, and they're both right around 750,000. Some weeks it's, 850 to 600. Either way, it's been both ways at this point now, where NXT had the better show. So they had those 250,000 floaters floated over to NXT for the week. So maybe next week, AEW will do 800,000 viewers, but they will not do 1.2. They will not do 1.5. Zack Ryder sold t-shirts for about a 2-month stretch back in 2011 because he did the internet stuff and it got over and it was interesting and people went, okay, I like this. But Enzo got over for 2 months. Fandango got over for 2 months. Like, a lot of guys got over for 2 months, and oh yeah, they suck. I don't care. Zack Ryder is in the, oh yeah, he's on TV. I like him, but I'm not going to buy a ticket to go see him. I'm not going to buy a pay-per-view to see him. I'm not going to go out of my way to check out a show when I haven't watched wrestling in 3 years, because freaking jabroni number 1750 is on AEW now.
Okay.
Like, if they would have signed Seth Rollins or Daniel Bryan, or maybe even at this point Jay Lethal might move the needle more than Matt Cardona. This was just Cody signing one of his friends and giving him a deal and putting him on TV. And maybe if they let him cut some promos, he can get over and can get a little of attention like he did 9 years ago. But he's not going to set the wrestling world on fire. He's not going to move the needle. We're not going to all of a sudden have, 1.5 million viewers. And if we do, I will bow down and say I was wrong. But I have a feeling 800,000 will be the rating for AEW this week, and then next week it'll go back down.
You still owe me for a bow down saying that you were wrong about a month ago.
Oh, when was I wrong?
You were wrong a month ago, and you admitted it.
About what?
Not on air, but you admitted it.
I think you're making things up.
No, would I make stuff up?
You said Matt Cardona is a big star.
He is a big star.
That out of your ass.
Come on, man. If you book him right,
compared to who? Compared to me, yeah, he's a big star.
Well, I didn't see anybody get all excited for NXT superstar Tony Sabatelli. He was on AEW Dark the last couple of weeks.
Well, yeah, because he's never been on TV. He's nobody.
Well, he's been on NXT TV.
I just, like, if Adam Cole went to AEW, it would be a big deal right now.
Well, yeah. I mean, hell, they have a huge deal down there. I mean, he's a global superstar. People know him all over. You hear the people over in England when they yell "Bebe." My God, it's freaking like ear popping.
Like, Matt Hardy is not a huge star. He's over, but he's not a huge star, and he didn't move the needle. What in the world makes you think Zack Ryder is going to move the needle?
Okay, so can you honestly agree, though, that a lot of that could be also the way that they book people? There are some people I will agree that you could book them any way possibly you can, and they still aren't going to get over with fans. But come on, I mean, you had a whole, like, Nassau Coliseum, I think is where they were at, that he come out there, and it was deafening. They were cheering for him. I mean, this is the only thing I feel bad. I feel bad because people aren't really getting a true reaction because there's no fans in the stadiums, arenas, or wherever they want studios that they're at. So it's really hard to judge. And I get people's opinions like, okay, yeah, because, they see the way it is. There's no huge, exciting fan reaction. So people are going to sit there and be like, oh, God, who is he? Who cares?
Yeah.
But
well, no, but you ask a good question. That was the first good question you asked here about Zack Ryder. Could WWE have gotten him more over? Could he have been a bigger star in WWE? And obviously the answer is yes, because he did get attention by himself. He got interest from the people doing the internet champ stuff and doing the woo 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 and doing all that stuff, and he had a catchphrase. Yeah, and so he got attention. But that's not necessarily the same thing as getting over. It was like we talked about Fandango, right? Fandango had everyone doing the doing the dance and singing the thing. And
what did I say about that one? I said that was the writers and the back office that dropped the ball on something.
Oh, no, Fandango was the drizzling shits. That's why he didn't get over. He is so much better now than he was. But like when you bring in a guy
really like Fandango, I was supposed to ask.
I don't, but he got over with me for the first time ever a couple weeks ago, just from his selling during the heat of a tag team match, right?
Oh yeah, were they?
And how he was, he was, no, not the Mounties. It was the week before that. When it was during the Great American Bash. They had that 6-man tag with him and
they wore the luchador masks that looked like the ding dongs.
In the
'80s.
Yeah, but he had a spot where he took a prolongated heat during the match, and he was fighting tooth and nail to try to get that tag, and it was really bringing the intensity up. And so he's, Fandango's figured it out. He's athletic and good, but it's like the best example would be like a John Cena, right? I mean, John Cena had everything you'd ever want in a wrestling star, like a guy who's potentially going to be a big star. And the same thing with Roman, same shit. They took a guy who was pretty green in the business, but they had all the makings of being a big star, and they pushed them and shoved them down everyone's throat when people got interested in them, but they didn't wait for them to organically get over to, with the fans to the point where the fans needed them to get that push. Like Daniel Bryan got over. He got over, like against the will of WWE and the machine. Like Daniel Bryan persevered and got over in spite of his anti-push.
That's what I'm saying though, because if you use an example of like back in the day when there was the Monday Night Wars, or even before then, there was several superstars that they, this is before obviously social media, and we're dating ourselves because we're really fucking old. But they said that for a lot of superstars that ended up, contracts expired, they went over to WCW and then they killed it. They absolutely killed it. And they were popular.
There weren't a lot of guys that went over to WCW that weren't already over with WWE that really got over. Like WCW didn't make a lot of stars. Now they got Scott Hall and Kevin Nash got more over with the NWO than they did.
X-Pac got more over WCW with him going over there.
I don't think he got more over than he did with DX, but he got more over than 1-2-3 Kid. Right. Yeah.
He was more over after he left the NWO the next following a week. Correct. Then he was on there and they introduced him and he fucking popped.
Now, see, I would go the other way. I would say there were a lot of guys who were toiling around in WCW that never got the big push that went over to WWF and got mad over. Stunning Steve Austin was a mid-card guy at WCW because he couldn't get through the glass ceiling to get into the main event because they had Flair and the Horsemen and all those guys. And Mick Foley, same thing. Cactus Jack couldn't get over in WCW, but he became a huge star as Mankind. So,
not to get off
and that could be the case.
But just think about if he would have done what he did in ECW and WCW.
Right.
Instead of the Study Steve Austin. You know how much of a difference that would be? Maybe we wouldn't even have had Stone Cold in
for sure. But I mean, like, and that's one of the things that's going on now, because WWE, like, that was one of the things that Austin and Foley and The Rock and Hunter had going for them, was at the time WWF went from being where all the stars were. So like in a 2-year period, WWF went from having like Mr. Wonderful, Tito Santana, Mr. Perfect, Ravishing Rick Rude, Rowdy Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior, like every big star of the 80s was there. Superfly Jimmy Snuka, like every single guy. Jake the Snake Roberts, like almost every big star of the 80s was in WWF for like WrestleMania 6, WrestleMania 7, and then right after WrestleMania 8, there was like a mass exodus of all these guys, and WWE, all because they even had Flair at WrestleMania 8, which is we're going to talk about tonight. But you go to WrestleMania 9, and Bret Hart's in the main event with Yokozuna, and this is the last time you see Ted DiBiase. This is one of the last times you see Hulk Hogan. Right. The undercard is Razor Ramon and Mr. Perfect and Lex Luger, and all those guys are gone by WrestleMania 11. And so then you got a roster that went from being the greatest roster ever assembled in the history of professional wrestling to having Bret and Shawn and The Undertaker and nobody else on the roster. And so they brought in all these young guys at the time, Austin and Rock and Mick Foley. and there was plenty of room for them to grow and become stars, and it changed the business. And that's kind of where we're at again now with WWF, or WWE rather, where they have all the main eventers from every independent promotion and even some of the big time promotions from all over the world, Japan, Canada, Mexico. They have every single top guy. And so it's so hard to get ahead if you go to WWE. I mean, a guy like EC3, right? Who you would just looking at him, you think, God, Vince is going to jerk off to this guy. He's going to make him a big star. And he's built like a shit brick house. He can talk. He's a good looking dude. He can go in the ring. He's not bad in the ring. He's not great, but he's not bad. But he couldn't even get on TV. So Bobby Roode can't get on TV, but he's a main eventer at Impact or at AEW. So AEW has that going to their benefit, where they can take these guys like a Dean Ambrose who couldn't get on TV and let him be Jon Moxley and cut the reins loose and let him be a big star. They can find the undiscovered talents who haven't been big stars anywhere else, like the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. Kenny was a big star in Japan, so that's not, but I mean, you can find all those guys. And so they're building an interesting roster, and I'm excited. I think they need one more really big star. Like, Jericho's great. He's a big star. I think Moxley was close to being a big star, and I think he's got a chance to be bigger now in AEW than he was in WWE, but they need an Adam Cole or a Seth Rollins or a Daniel Bryan, or what would be amazing is if they could get a guy like a John Cena just for like a year or two. That's never going to happen. But like something like that, or when there were rumors about Randy Orton, that would have been a game changer, man. That would have changed the business. But until they can get one of those guys, they're going to have to find guys and make them stars.
Like, the pocketbook is fine, but I still think that we've seen Randy Orton do pretty much everything in WWE at that point. And that would have been something that he probably should have done just for experience wise, because he hasn't done any of that. He's never left the nest. He's never, been somewhere else. And I understand, you keep loyal, Undertaker kept loyal, but I think he should have went to another company.
He signed like a hockey contract. Yeah.
Oh, I know he signed a hockey contract, but at the same time, if he's confident enough in himself and he knows that he can do this shit and be in the top level, he should have just went over there. Maybe it was a 2-year, 3-year deal. Still, that means something different, something fresh. We haven't seen him over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I also think, too, it would have been nice to see Randy Orton with no governor, with no strings attached, nothing holding him back. It'd be nice to see him go balls to the wall for some matches here and there. Because I just think if you had Randy Orton and Kenny Omega and you let them go 30 minutes with no restrictions, they could do something really special.
That's what I'm saying, because there's a plenty of athletes over there that he's never faced. I'd like to see him go against Lance Archer too.
Right?
The things that he could do with some of those superstars that he could have wrestling. Even the fact even if he wasn't like AEW, the fact that he could have just went overseas like Jon Moxley and went over there to New Japan. Just
wrestled Okada. Jesus Christ. Could you imagine him in Okada?
That's what I'm saying. Give yourself a chance. Yeah, the money's fine or whatever, but you can't tell me that even if he did leave, that Vince wouldn't try to give him money to come back.
Yeah, I think
it would have been smart
the guy
for him to take on new pastures and just start, all over.
Well, I mean, he did the smart thing. I mean, he did the smart thing, taking the 10-year contract worth, $5, $6, $7, $12, $20 million. I don't know how much it is, but it's probably $1.5 million to $3 million a year.
Well, why wouldn't you take that chance if you have confidence in yourself?
Well, it's not necessarily about having confidence. It's just the thing is, he's 40 years old probably at this point. somewhere around there.
There is no way in hell that he would make less than $6 million each year by him going back and forth. And you won't.
Well,
It's not going to be one sign, one promotion. He could go back and forth.
Except for this, right? If he gets hurt right now with a 10-year contract, if he, breaks his neck, whatever, something bad happens where he can't wrestle anymore. Yeah. And so, when you're 25, you can take that chance to take 2 years to go over somewhere else. When you're 40 and you're looking at setting up your family for life and you're looking at that kind of thing, the guaranteed 10-year contract where if you get hurt, you're going to be taken care of, and being loyal, knowing that he's never going to have to work a day the rest of his life when this contract's up unless he wants to. Like, that's the smart move. But the better move for all of us, for the business, for us, the fans, would have been for him to go to AEW on a 2-year contract or a 1-year contract even, and setting the place on fire. And that would have been one of those where you could see them doing 2 million viewers a week if Randy Orton's on AEW feuding with Jericho and Moxley and Brian Cage and Cody, and could you imagine him and Cody having a big feud, the history they have together? Like, it would have been insane.
I wanted an Omega Orton, and then I wanted an Okada, and then I wanted a Tatsu. And then I wanted a couple other ones up in New Japan, because he, I don't know what his shoulder deal is, if he's still having issues with those, but just that he just fits that strong style opinion. I mean, go over there, be that strong, evil American, and be that heel like he always can, and cut devastating promos. Like, dude, that would be money making. That would, for sure. I mean, COVID happened, so yes, he probably did a smart deal. If you guys put that in perspective too, I mean, COVID. No one knew that this was going to happen. So, yeah, in the long run, he made a great and smart decision.
So, anyway, we have filibustered long enough. We're going to be
Zack Ryder's a huge grab for AEW. Okay, on to the next one.
Oh, God. He is absolutely just another guy.
We're on the next segment right now, so we can't talk about debate about this anymore.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he was so excited we ended up talking about real over people like Randy Orton. Okay. If that's what you got to tell yourself, then all right. So, this is an idea I've been kicking around for a long time. This is a segment we are going to call Card Subject to Change. This is where we're going to go back and look at a historical wrestling event where maybe someone dropped the ball a little bit and we didn't get the dream booking that we wanted. We didn't get the matches we wanted. Things like when Daniel Bryan didn't win the Royal Rumble, things like specifically what we're going to be talking about tonight, WrestleMania 8. What should have been the Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan main event at WrestleMania that we didn't get. Now, we did end up getting the Flair-Hogan pay-per-view match. If you went to a house show anywhere in the world during this entire year, you got a Flair versus Hogan match. But apparently, the rumor and innuendo is that the Flair-Hogan house shows weren't drawing so well. So they pulled the plug. And this is what we... you know what? To give this storyline, actually, you know what? Yes, I will start with the WrestleMania 8 card. So what we had was Shawn Michaels versus the Heartbreak Kid, the newly heel turned Shawn Michaels versus Tito Santana. We had The Undertaker, who just was fresh off a babyface turn, versus Jake the Snake Roberts. We had one of the greatest matches in the history of WrestleMania, Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper for the Intercontinental title. It is by far Roddy Piper's best wrestling match in his career. Maybe not the best. It's between this or the dog collar match with Greg the Hammer Valentine for Piper's best work. But this one is a pure wrestling match, so I give it the edge. Then we had an 8-man tag, Hacksaw Jim Duggan with his newly Freshly babyface turned I want my country back Sergeant Slaughter. The Big Boss Man and Virgil taking on the Repo, the Mountie, the Nasty Boys. Then we had for the WWF title, the Macho Man Randy Savage versus Ric Flair. Followed by Tatanka versus Rick the Model Martel. When the hell? Like, this is some seriously fucked up booking. They had the WWF title match in the middle of the pay-per-view, followed by Tatanka versus Rick Martel. We had the Natural Disasters versus Money Incorporated. This match ended in a countout, which nobody liked, as Money Inc. just grabbed their belts, or just left. It was fine. And then we had Owen Hart, the Rocket Owen Hart, versus Skinner. This is some really old school stuff where they just had a throwaway. Yeah, just had an old throwaway jobber match right before the main event there. You know, Skinner, a.k.a. Zack Ryder, a.k.a. same thing. And then our main event featured the Immortal One, Hulk Hogan, versus fucking Psycho Sid Vicious. And this match ended in a big schmoz where we saw the return of the Ultimate Warrior and Papa Shango in his first action.
So they really
at WrestleMania.
That a second main event, though. They had two main events.
Sid and Hogan?
Yeah. They considered
no.
that.
Yeah, that was the main event. Hogan versus Sid. Savage and Flair was in the middle of the card somewhere.
That's what I'm saying, though, is that the way that they keep trying to say that the first main event, because it wasn't like you were saying, wasn't Randy and Flair like in the middle?
Yeah, it was in the middle right before Tatanka and Rick Martel, right?
So they're still billing it as the main event, the first one, and then the second one was Hogan. Yeah, I still don't understand why they still bill it like that. Like, wow.
I don't know. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go all the way back to Survivor Series 1991, okay? And get some build up here. So what they did was they had Hogan wrestled The Undertaker at Survivor Series 91, and The Undertaker won the belt with a little bit of help from Ric Flair and Bruce Pritchard and Mr. Perfect and Paul Bearer. Where the tombstone on the chair, nobody saw it. They ditched the chair. Taker won the belt. There was a lot of interesting stuff on this pay-per-view, actually. The Legion of Doom were the tag team champions at the time. They were in a feud with the Natural Disasters, who were heels at the time. Like, this is just kind of one of those where if you look, all you had to do was go back 6 months to realize how discombobulated WWF was at the time. We had the Nasty Boys, the Beverly Brothers versus the Rockers and the Bushwhackers. We had the Bossmen and Legion of Doom versus the Natural Disasters and IRS. We had Hacksaw, Sarge, Tito, and Kerry Von Erich in a Survivor Series match against Colonel Mustafa, a.k.a. the Iron Sheik, the Berserker.
Berserker.
Yeah, Hercules and Skinner. Talk about a job, like just a jobber team in a Survivor Series match. But then our real main event, we had Ric Flair, Ted DiBiase, the Mountie, and the Warlord versus Rowdy Roddy Piper, Bret the Hitman Hart, the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith, and, of course, Virgil, because that's a thing.
This is Survivor Series what again?
1991, okay?
Wow,
and so
isn't that nostalgic?
Yes. So this led to Tuesday in Texas, which was the first time they tried a Tuesday pay-per-view. They had the rematch of Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker. They had a phenomenal match with Jake the Snake Roberts and Randy Savage. Go watch this if you haven't seen it. Jake slaps the ever-loving shit out of Miss Elizabeth in the middle of the ring. Got some serious heat. This is one of the most brilliant segments ever.
Yes, sir. On that, Macho Man was scolded severely by Elizabeth's dad because of that. Because he really thought that they did it for real life. Like, it was like, whatever.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Like, he got major heat for that one.
So, and LOD versus the Rockers was here, and this is when Sean and Marty got mad at each other, and then just after this is when they did the barbershop angle, right?
Right into the glass.
Yes. And so shortly after this pay-per-view on December 4th, because Hogan and Taker had another controversial finish type thing. There was a lot of stuff going on, interference, all this, but Hogan ends up winning the title back. This was his 4th title reign. And then they stripped Hulk Hogan of the title. Now, this all ties into the steroid trial. That is something that was getting ready to go on in 1992, where the federal government went after WWF for basically no reason whatsoever, with no evidence whatsoever, and filed federal charges against the WWF about steroids. So basically they were trying to say they were distributing drugs to their wrestlers, and all that was found totally false, and they were acquitted on all things, but Hulk Hogan was on steroids, and so they had to get the title off of him, and this is when they started moving. They made the move to guys like Ric Flair and Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels because of this steroids trial. So they wanted to get to more natural looking athletes and whatnot. So what they did was at the Royal Rumble, they decided that the winner of the Royal Rumble would be the WWF champion. This, of course, is the famous Royal Rumble that Ric Flair went in at number 3, lasted the whole night. The 60-minute man won the title. They did a cycle. This is when they turned Sid Justice heel, even though he was killing it as a babyface. And actually, Hogan got booed because he did the heel shit when they tried to turn Sid, and nothing made sense because Hogan got eliminated, and then he pulled Sid out. And really bad booking is what this was. But this is when they put Owen Hart with the anvil and made the new Hart Foundation. Roddy Piper won the Intercontinental title at Royal Rumble from the Mountie. And then we had another Natural Disasters versus LOD match. And the LOD were still the champions at Royal Rumble. So that's going to play into kind of my rebooking as we go forward. So,
which one are we going to go through first?
So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to accept what happened at Survivor Series and up to Royal Rumble, and I'm going to be okay with that. I'm good with breaking up the Rockers. I like Shawn becoming a heel. But where I'm going to start is with Shawn Michaels, right? Okay, so my first match of my WrestleMania 8, instead of Shawn and Tito, I'm going to open up my show with an absolute crazy barn burner, and I'm going the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels versus Owen Hart to open WrestleMania 8. They would have completely tore the house down. They would have completely probably stole the show, or at least been the second best match on the show and given Piper and Bret a run for their money. But I think it would have been an awesome opening. Now, one of the things I would have done if I was king of WWE back in 1992, I would have started an angle with the Nasty Boys and the Bushwhackers, where I would have made the Bushwhackers a little more serious, knowing their history and that they were blood and guts guys before they got to the WWF, and they got the silly licking kids' heads gimmick and walking around going, ah! Ah! Right? And so I would have started something with them and the Nasty Boys, with the Nasty Boys. Yeah, right. Hey! Oh! So I would have started some kind of feud with the Nasty Boys where we had a bunch of smudge finishes, double countouts, double disqualifications, and I would have introduced some weapons, and I would have had the very first street fight at WrestleMania 8. The Nasty Boys versus the Bushwhackers. Right after we had that barn burner of an opening match, we need something completely different. We need something to get the fans, to keep the fans involved after, Shawn and Owen went 15 minutes and tore the house down. So we have a street fight, no rules. All the accoutrement with the trash cans and the weapons and all that good stuff. And that, I think it would be a fun street fight. The Bushwhackers are blood and guts guys. I think this would have been my chance to elevate the Bushwhackers up to being a legitimate contender for the tag team titles too. I would have put them over on the Nasty Boys. I would have shown that they're tough. They're not just funny, happy-go-lucky guys, that they can get serious when they need to. And I think it would have given a lot more depth to the Bushwhackers, a team that was already seriously over with the fans. And this would have been a fun match. Oh, okay. So moving on, I'm good with everything that had been going on. Tatanka we're trying to push him. We're trying to establish him. So I've got Tatanka versus Rick Martel. Don't need a lot of build-up or storytelling in that match. Rick Martel's a solid heel. He's over. It's great. This would have just been a good chance to get Tatanka in there with a guy who can really go like Rick Martel and give us a nice match. This is where I'm going to start to seriously kind of deviate from things that happened. So we know that this is going to end up being Jake the Snake Roberts' last WWF match for quite a while. And he goes to WCW after this. But he had been in a very serious feud with Randy Savage for most of the last year. And after Tuesday in Texas, I would have separated for a while. And I would have built this back up starting at the Royal Rumble. I would have found a way to get Savage and Jake going again. And I would have built to a retirement match here where Savage beats Jake 1, 2, 3, middle of the ring when he drops the big elbow. And we send Jake and Damian off to their demise. And that would have been the end of that. And then one of the people that got left off the WrestleMania 8 card, actually there's a couple, was the British Bulldog. He was not on the card for whatever reason. I don't know if he was hurt or whatever. So we're just going to assume that he was here and he was happy and healthy. And I've got British Bulldog versus Ted DiBiase. This is another thing that I wouldn't have done. I would not have teamed up DiBiase and IRS. I know they kind of did because they were at a point. They turned the Natural Disasters. They lost the Rockers. The tag team division was kind of in flux at this point, and they didn't have serious contenders. So they threw DiBiase in there, top guy with IRS, because it makes sense. The two guys with money gimmicks. And I really enjoyed their run. I thought they were a great tag team. But for me, I would never have taken the titles off the LOD. Hold on. I need a little drink here. Delicioso. So I would have kept the titles on LOD all the way up to WrestleMania here. And if I wanted to take them off TV for a little while, starting at Mania, I would have put him in there with the Natural Disasters because they had this storyline going on, and we never really got a payoff. We got some we got some countouts, we got some schmoz finishes, but I think LOD versus Earthquake and Typhoon at WrestleMania would have been a huge match and would have gone down in history as something we remembered. Now this one was hard for me because there's a lot of cool stuff we could have done here. I would have had. I would keep Brett and Piper because, like I said, this is one of the best matches in the history of WWF. Brett wasn't ready to be a main eventer yet, but we were establishing him with that Intercontinental title during this run. And so the Brett and Piper match I would have kept because, they completely tore the house down. It's one of my favorite matches ever. So yeah, Brett and Piper, I just would have moved it a little later in the card here. Because it belongs towards the back end of this card. Now this is the big deviation. I would have had Sid turn heel at Royal Rumble like he did, but I would have had him pull out the Undertaker. I would have had Undertaker eliminate Sid and then have Sid go off, pull Undertaker out, and then they feud to the back. And this would have been a great build up. We did get this match at a later WrestleMania, which is nice. But right now, at this point, they were trying to establish Taker. I think Sid, they were kind of on the fence about Sid again. I think shortly before this, they thought he could be a top babyface, but Sid didn't want to be a babyface. He demanded to be a heel, and so that changed all their plans. And so I would have had Taker and Sid here at Mania, and of course I would have kept the streak alive. Why wouldn't I do that? I know it's hindsight at this point. This was only 2-0 for Undertaker after WrestleMania 8, but I think that would have been a lot better than what they did. And then just because instead of having the big schmoz at the end with Papa Shango and the Ultimate Warrior, I would have thrown Papa Shango in a match. You're trying to get the guy over, god damn it. And so I would have fed him Jim Duggan here. This is our little let me up match, our little popcorn match. Go to the bathroom before the main event. And I would have given us the main event that we wanted. This would have been a perfect opportunity to build up. I get that Hogan and Flair weren't drawing house shows in November and December and whatnot, but that's because they had no buildup on TV. I think if they would have done all the same stuff that they did with Savage, but it would have been with Hogan and Linda Hogan, or if they would have done all kinds this is a no-brainer. They could have made this match the biggest match, almost as big as Andre or Savage and Hogan. I just don't understand how they dropped this ball. But, it would have been perfect. Have Flair dump Hogan at the end of the Royal Rumble and steal the title. That makes it really easy.
For the listeners, or the very few listeners, maybe, that we have. It's about only like 20. Anyway, those that don't understand this, though, back in that day, Ric Flair was known to be the world champion. Now,
correct.
On the other hindsight, because these two entities never combined or never even crossed paths, Hogan, because of popularity, the way it was back in those days, he was the real world champion. And there was this is without social media, and this was a huge back and forth debate, huge back and forth debate. Kind of like in the consensus of how you have AEW versus NXT in some fans' eyes, where, AEW is a lot better, no, NXT is a lot better, blah, blah, blah. So if you put that in the concept, that's how it was back then with Flair and Hogan. Now, I feel it was a big mistake not pulling the trigger on that.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the first times we saw. Well, no, it wasn't even the first time. If we go back just a year before that, the plan was main event of WrestleMania 7. The plan was for Hogan and Tugboat to be in the main event. They were the heel turn that Sergeant Slaughter did. Was originally slated to be Tugboat, was going to turn on his buddy Hogan, and he did turn on Hogan, but they just never had a real big feud after the turn. And once the turn happened, they realized that it wasn't going to be as big a draw as they thought it might be. And but at this point, the fans were starting to get tired of Hogan. And so here's the thing. This match with Flair, I think it would have been a good opportunity for WWE to set up for a big double turn. This would have been a good time. They could have had Hogan do all the stuff, cheat, lie his way. He could have cut all the promos leading up to this, where he was kind of starting to whine a little bit and thinking it's unfair. They took my title away, and then Flair didn't beat me. I fell over the top rope kind of thing. This would have been a good time to start setting up for a Hogan heel turn. And then he officially could have turned at Mania. What I would have done is had Hogan cheat and Sid get involved. I would have had Sid get involved in the finish with Hogan and help Hogan win. And then Hogan and Sid could have been put in the boots to Mr. Perfect and Flair after the match. And that's where we get our Ultimate Warrior music hit, and he runs down to the ring. He clears the house. And now we're setting up for Sid and Warrior, Hogan and Warrior at SummerSlam, at Survivor Series. And we've got another 6 months of real storylines with Hogan as a serious heel, And then we've got the Ultimate Warrior. And I think that would have reignited the business at that point, kind of like it did when Hogan finally turned heel, with the NWO. The fans were starting to get tired of the same old Hogan act. And so house shows in general weren't drawing. It didn't matter who Hogan was wrestling. It didn't matter who, where Savage and we had Flair and Piper were doing all the house shows. We had Savage and Jake. Hogan was wrestling everybody. Sid and Taker were doing all the house shows at this point. Like I'm looking at these cards and I'm going, man, these cards are amazing. And then they just like threw together WrestleMania 8 out of panic, almost, it feels like. And I just think it would have been great. Yeah, I mean, Flair as a baby face at this point. But see, that's the other thing. When Flair went back to the WC, he was a freaking baby face, because at this point, Flair was so over from all the years of his work. Like, it was a natural thing to do. Like, they just completely dropped the ball here. Hogan needed to turn heel, and Flair could have been the big baby face. And then you could have had Flair and Savage and Ultimate Warrior fighting for their lives against Hogan. And, well, see, even you could have had Mr. Perfect turn on Flair and Hogan and Perfect, and then Sid was there, and then you have the Ultimate Warrior and Savage make the save. Like this, you could have set up for a huge Survivor Series match at that point. Yeah, and you had Ted. I mean, you had all their God, their roster
IRS
was still, yeah. But I'm just saying, their roster was still strong.
Yep. You had the parts. You had the the chemicals to add into being huge.
Yeah, for sure. But even then, that would have been another chance. You could have elevated Brett, because they were going to do that anyway. So you could have. You were looking for an all-star Survivor Series match. Just think about that. After this Mania, you kept building up, and then you had Hogan, Sid, Mr. Perfect, and Ted DiBiase on one side.
Yep.
Against Ric Flair. Oh my God, Ric Flair, Randy Savage, the Ultimate Warrior, and Bret Hart. Oh my God, that's could be the biggest Survivor Series match in the history of ever. Oh God, why are we such better bookers than Vince McMahon? Because we have 2020 hindsight.
Well, here's the thing. I was thinking about this, because there's a lot of times where a lot of fans, and there is fans that don't know what they're talking about. They talk out their ass or whatever. But there's a lot of us that are really hardcore, like, pro wrestling fans. We get into it. We do our research. We look at it. You, on the other hand, you actually did get into the business and that stuff. But there's a lot of guys that don't get enough credit that could book things really well. And that would have been a moneymaker right there. At those times, remembering how the times were as a kid, that would have been a huge pop, because all those ones that you named out, I always wanted to see them out there in the ring. I wanted to watch them on Saturdays, because they did a Saturday show too in the morning. Mean Gene Okerlund, just think of the promos that he interviewed, he could have cut. That would have been awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, just you think about the Hogan heel promos. Once he got rolling with the NWO, like, it was amazing. Like, you could have had Hogan out there every week, just cutting promos. And
easily.
Yeah, the business might have been down at WrestleMania 8, but if you turned Hogan heel, it would have ignited it, because now he could wrestle all the guys again. He could wrestle Savage again. He could wrestle, Ultimate Warrior again, and all these matches would make sense now, because now he's a heel. He could have wrestled The Undertaker. He could wrestle, it's just, there's so many options. And then you could have him as the heel champ all the way to WrestleMania 9, and we could have got him passing the torch to Bret Hart, at WrestleMania 9, or even later on that year. And then, Bret would have been made, instead of what happened where Flair, and Savage passed the title back and forth. And then on a house show somewhere, Bret wins the title randomly, and they had to put it on Saturday, Saturday morning TV to let everyone know this happened. And then, next thing you know, Monday Night Raw kind of becomes a thing, and the Monday Night Wrestling show is there, and Brett's defending the title every week. Like, they had to do that because Brett never got his big buildup. He never got the push to be the champion, and so Brett wins the title. Flair's gone, Hogan's gone, Warrior's gone, and they didn't make new stars. It's astonishing how poorly they dropped the ball in this era, and it really hurt the business for another 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's people always talk about how Bret Hart wasn't a big draw, and Diesel wasn't a draw, and Shawn wasn't a draw, but they went from WrestleMania 8, where we had the Legion of Doom, who's the biggest tag team in the history of the business, Tito Santana, Jake the Snake Roberts, Undertaker, Rowdy Roddy Piper, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Sergeant Slaughter, the Big Boss Man, the Nasty Boys, Flair, Savage, man, this roster, but Sid and Hogan and the Warrior and Papa Shango, every single one of those 4 guys that were involved in the main event, not on WrestleMania 9. The world title match, Savage and Flair, Savage was doing commentary at WrestleMania 9, but no Hacksaw Jim Duggan, no Roddy Piper, no Jake the Snake. So like, you go from having the world's greatest roster in the history of the business to all of a sudden you've got guys that have been mid-card guys and they got to be big stars. I think that's the biggest problem AEW has. They have 1 star, Chris Jericho, and then they have some guys that were mid-card talents at WWE, like Cody, and I'll be generous now and say Zack Ryder's a mid-card guy, even though he's not. He's a jobber. But but Matt Hardy was a mid-card guy in a tag team act in WWE, and then John Moxley, Dean Ambrose was not a top guy at WWE. He was like just below top guy. So they have 1 big star in Chris Jericho. They have a bunch of indie darlings and then mid-card WWE guys, and they're trying to make a name for themselves with that roster. And that's really hard to do. And they're kind of in the same spot where WWF was at WrestleMania 9, where let's see who becomes a big star. And Brett did, Shawn did, and The Undertaker did. Those guys became stars in the business, but it's hard when you go from a roster full of guys to beat to Bret Hart's wrestling Virgil and Skinner and the Berserker, and that's who he's beating every Monday night, which was a nice way to build him up, get a bunch of wins, and show that he deserves to be the champion because he can beat all these guys and he's a fighting champion. And I got really behind that as a kid, but then we move along to Survivor Series, where we were just pitching a Super Dream match. Well, it was Bret versus Shawn that year in 1992. Intercontinental champion versus the champion, and it was great. But
right, and I was looking up exactly where they were having this WrestleMania 8, and most of where the shows that they were happening, and it was actually more the upper Midwest Eastern area. And from which you rebooked that, from what I understand, looking at this, they had high attendance numbers for these pay-per-views up there. So even with the house shows, not knowing exactly, but just kind of guesstimating here, I think that would really work. I think that would have boosted sales, ticket sales, and that would have been done if that's where they were running at that point in time.
Yeah, let me look up where was
WrestleMania 8 was at the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis, Indiana,
which would have been a good town for Ric Flair. It was an NWA town, and whoa, hold on. So in Indianapolis, which is a weird place to have WrestleMania. You don't think of Indianapolis as like a big city, and but Indianapolis would have been a good place for Ric Flair to be in the main event with Hogan. Like the problem was whenever they went to an NWA town, they drew huge money because everyone knew who Ric Flair was. But on the West Coast, they had they came down here and only sold like 1,900 tickets to a show one time.
Well, that was mainly the one Piper area though too, because he was in that.
Correct. Yeah, he was in Portland. Yeah, he wrestled in Portland
area.
And down here in the California territory with the Guerreros and all that. And but yeah, man, like people did. The NWA didn't get out here on the West Coast. And the NWA didn't get up to the Northeast very often. Like, they had a stronghold in Baltimore, but Baltimore's a big wrestling town, but so a lot of the
know that was the
towns,
NWA area.
Yeah.
That definitely, the way that you rebooked that would have actually definitely 100% guaranteed worked. Talking about it today.
I will say there's one thing we should address. The reason that Marty Jannetty is not on my WrestleMania 8 card, even after he ended up getting arrested just around January, December, January, sometime around there, and was fired. That's why he wasn't on there. Because obviously you would think Shawn versus Marty was the WrestleMania match.
Right, that would have been, the build-up. Yep.
And I have this bad feeling that if Marty hadn't gotten in trouble, that Shawn and Marty at WrestleMania would not have gone Marty Jannetty's way, and Shawn would not have been on the same career path, because it is kind of a well-known thing that people thought Marty was the star of that tag team and Shawn was the other guy. Everyone really thought all along that Marty was going to be the bigger draw and the singles star if they ever did break up. So sometimes these things work out. Shawn became a big star, and Marty got hired and fired 783 times by WWF. And
I was always, being in the Midwest, being in the Sodak, I was always more of a Shawn Michaels fan than Marty Jannetty, not giving Marty Jannetty
which is it's crazy to me. I mean, that was within the business. Yeah.
Right.
Within the business, the guys thought Marty was, because Marty's a great worker. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Marty's a great worker, and he was a pretty good talker. Like, he had some personality and he had the fire, and I wish we could have got that feud in full. Like, we got bits and pieces of it, a couple start and stops with it, and then of course Marty came back and had that great match with Kurt Angle years later, which was phenomenal. And
they did a pretty good job bringing him back and having a Rockers reunion though match.
Yeah. Oh, wasn't that match awesome? It was maybe the only time in the history of ever Shawn missed a kip up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean,
and
that
it was funny because. Yeah, but it was funny too, because Shawn, you could tell Shawn was having fun. Like, you could tell.
And you knew he was laughing at himself for not getting that.
He did. You saw him laugh in the ring and kind of like laugh it off, like, oh, this, we're out having fun. And and it was just nice. It's one of those things that if Shawn had done that, right around WrestleMania 14, if he had missed a nip up, he would have, ruined the whole match and threw a fit. But, I that was kind of the moment where it was like, okay, Shawn's really back and he's in a good place and this is a good spot to be in. And
you were saying with the Hogan turning heel, once again being up in that upper Midwest, upper Eastern area, that would have worked. Seeing him turn heel at that point would have also worked. And then, with the tag teams that you were talking about, I just, that really makes you wonder, like, right now, then why really didn't they go that way? That would have been the smarter go-to decision. Thus, also put in concept and perspective, a lot of these careers probably wouldn't have gone the way they were going before. You may not have had WCW. You may not have had a lot of those things. So it's interesting to bring that up because, I mean, it's good to think about it.
Yeah.
What you could have possibly had.
Well, I think luckily the Bruce Pritchard podcast exists. And so this is something they've talked about quite a bit, where him and Pat Patterson wanted to turn Hogan heel. And this is kind of the beginning of Vince getting in his own way, where he just refused to do it because Hogan will never be a heel. He's, the fans will, kill us if we turn him heel, kind of thing. And, Hogan was the cash cow. He was the guy selling all the t-shirts, selling all the wrestling figures, selling the merch, and Vince didn't want to lose his cash cow, which makes sense to me. I understand that thinking, but the people were starting to get tired of him and starting to boo him in the smart towns. This was kind of the beginning of the fans starting to turn on baby faces and cheer for the cool heels, where that was a growing number of the audience were starting to cheer for the Ric Flairs and the Paul Orndorffs and the Rick Rudes and Mr. Perfects of the world. And
people remember the Four Horsemen, and that was kind of like a heel
in
some ways.
Yeah,
but that's where that terminology came around for The Rock, where he was Rocky Maivia. He got the Hogan treatment.
Yeah.
And because he was, no one wanted to see the happy smiley face, eat your prayers, or say your prayers, take your vitamins concept, and they were pretty much tired of it. And that would have, he was the cash cow, but at the same time, if you can't take a risk, and because they sold the hell out of that MWO merch later on, but
oh, for sure. But that's it. Like, the fans were tired of it. They were tired of the red and yellow. They were tired of the whole act. And if they would have turned him heel at that point, just dude, he could have had him and Sid could have wrestled the freaking Road Warriors, man. How huge would that have been? Hogan and Sid tagging against the Legion of Doom. Oh yeah.
He still would have been a cash cow with the way the Hogan's presence, the way that pro wrestling was there, because at the time, also listeners that haven't been around that long, that maybe just was around in the 2000s. No one knew the way pro wrestling was. We didn't know that things were scripted in a sense. They didn't know that it was predetermined. It was as real as boxing could be. They didn't have an ABC anchor trying to, think, he needed to get clout and, get slapped the crap out of him in the back.
Well, that was before WrestleMania 1. That's the reason that Dr. V. David Schultz wasn't on WrestleMania 1. He lost the spot, and Paul Orndorff, I think, filled his old.
But they didn't have that on that year, so it kind of like died off just a little bit.
Well, but this is also about the same time that Vince McMahon was trying to let people know that wrestling was a work, so that he didn't have to pay the sports commissions anymore, the athletic commissions and whatnot. But it's one of those things where I think, for me, even when I was 9 years old, I went to my first house show when I was 9 years old, and the opening match was the Giant Gonzalez versus Randy Savage. It was supposed to be Owen Hart, but Owen Hart got hurt at this time, and the replacement was Randy Savage, right? And we're sitting in the nosebleeds, and this is the opening match, my first house show ever. Giant Gonzalez goes to give Macho Man a forearm across the back, and I could see from the cheap seats that he did not hit him at all. And at that moment, like, the light bulb went off, and I knew exactly what the wrestling business was, right? Like, I knew for sure
right away with the big old spandex painted spray brush muscles and hair type of outfit suit.
And so I knew what it was, and so it never bothered me. And I think most people of any kind of intelligence understand kind of what wrestling is just by watching it. Like, okay, it's not real. It's not a real fight. These guys aren't really trying to kill each other, kind of thing. But at some point you have to do something that's going to get the people talking. And Hogan turning heel at WrestleMania 8 would have reignited the business, and the cycle would have been broken. And next thing you know, you could have done all those matches again, and then built up to Bret Hart winning the title from Hogan and being a big star. And then going forward into the next era with the new generation, it would have been bigger. They wouldn't have been struggling for ratings. They wouldn't have been struggling to sell tickets, because Bret would have been a made man. So.
At that part, wasn't Flair also had a belt? Or was that a different year?
I thought he had it at Survivor Series,
Yes.
It was that run. He came in and he had the big gold.
Yep.
He had the big gold belt because it was his belt, and the NWA sued them, and they ended up having WCW and NWA ended up suing Flair, and they ended up having to drop the belt as a gimmick on TV. But it just,
even though Flair's the one that bought it.
Yeah. So it was all a bunch of silliness, and it was a weird time in the wrestling business. But that's it. I hope that this wasn't incredibly boring for all the listeners. I hope that this isn't just me being excited about dorky nerd stuff that I like to do. But yeah, give us some feedback. Let us know what you think. Let us know if we should never do this again, or let us know if you want us to rebook some more of this stuff that we hated, and see if we can't. I think maybe next time I'd like to do something that's a little more interesting, a little more creative. One of the cool things I saw was a shoot interview sometime where somebody rebooked the whole year 1985, but Hulk Hogan did not exist. So what would you do in WWF in 1985 if there was no Hulk Hogan? And so I'd like to do some of that. Yeah. I'd like to do some more of this kind of stuff where we do fantasy booking and we rebook some stuff. Maybe I think the WCW Invasion would be a good one to do. We're definitely going to do that. But yeah, please let us know what you think. Send us some hate tweets to DJ Barbecue, because I don't twat and I don't pay attention.
You twat. You just kind of sneak in there and twat.
I'm a sneaky twatter. So
on the Twitter.
All right.
The reason why we've had or heard a lot of dings, ding, ding, it's because that court that they were having between Jeff Jarrett and Anthem was a mistrial. It just broke the news right now.
The lawsuit. So
the lawsuit. No, nothing happened. It was considered a mistrial from what I'm reading here to make sure.
Nice.
That was just broke there. But yeah, I think this is good to always go back to the past of pro wrestling, because the old days are sometimes the ones that we look back and say, it was really the good old days in professional wrestling. We didn't have to deal with social media and trolls and a lot of the fun stuff. That I say this, I want to thank Cole for doing that, because this is awesome. I think we should be able to do this again. But yes, please give us your information. Please at Cole Dawson. I'm just kidding. Just at us at our Twitter accounts, because I don't want to give his Twitter account.
At Cole 2130. If you want to send me your hate tweets, go right ahead. I'm fine with it. You find me on Facebook, Cole Dawson. You can find me on Instagram as well, Cole2130. That's me. Go ahead. Send me your hate. Fill me up. That's fine. I can take it. I'm a big boy. And yeah, but send some to at DJ Barbecue too, though. Make sure you get some of that love going his way.
Well, if you want to at me, go to the Kota iRadio Network, capital WK at the end there, not fully spelled out network, or UnCutLiveShow, or you can go to Cole's favorite Twitter account, which is ProWres UnCut. That's Pro Wrestling UnCut's Twitter account. Go at him, talk to him, tell him how much you love him, and give him some thoughts. What you thought about this podcast.
Yes, please do. So going forward, just programming alert. We're going to go have a good mixture going forward. We're going to talk current wrestling news. We'll talk about the pay-per-views coming up. We're definitely going to have to talk some boxing, I think, here in the near future, since we have basically a dream match about to happen with Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. So yeah, we'll do that. We'll do some of this, and I've got booked officially. I have two guests ready, or two opponents, two contenders to the throne for the king of fantasy wrestling, Cole Dawson. We are going to cover the new generation era as well as the Hulk Hogan era. So we're going to get in there 1985 to 1989, and we will also cover 1990 to 1994. I will keep the opponents under wraps for now, but so we got that coming up in the near future. We'll do some more fantasy booking, rebooking the territory. What did I say? This is a card subject to change. Let us know, guys, what you want to hear, and we will get that to you. So that is going to do it for us today. Thank you, DJ Barbecue, for recording me and working in my schedule and making sure my wife doesn't come home from work and roll her eyes at me and get pissed off because I'm podcasting and talking when she's getting home on a Friday night from work. So thank you for listening. We will be back with you next week. And one last shout out. Congratulations, Eddie Kingston. I can't wait to watch it, brother. So with that said, DJ Barbecue, take us out, sir.
Well, I would like to thank our sponsors, K-Back Radio. Go to kbackradio.com, and it's rock radio the way the rock radio should be. Jekyll and Hyde Barbecue. Jekyll and Hyde Barbecue make barbecue so good, they'll put a smile on your face. And Remedy Brewing Company. They make remedies that ail you. Oh, and by the way, for Midwest All Pro Wrestling, Midwest All Pro Wrestling, you want to go to MidwestAllProWrestling.com and feel the excitement. Cole, thank you very much for doing the show again. Like always, you do an awesome job. You are the podcast man in the sky. Please go to our, I can't go through a dang segment without screwing up. All right, end scene. Anyway, go to bonfire.com/store/KotaiRadioNetWK, all lowercase, to go to our merch store. We are independent. Please support us because we appreciate you. Cole, I think I said pretty much all. Why don't you go ahead and not screw up like I did?
Unfiltered and uncut, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
So until next time, have a good night. Mwah.
Ooh, you know it.
Is it your dream to become a professional wrestling superstar, manager, or referee? Well, you can make that dream a reality by training with Midwest All Pro Wrestling. Learn from former WWE superstar and NXT coach Eugene Nick Dinsmore. Classes are training right now, so go to MidwestAllPro.com and click on training to enroll today.
Kotai Radio Network is brought to you by Midwest All Pro Wrestling. Go to MidwestAllProWrestling.com and get tickets today. Remedy Brewing Company. It's the cure for what ails you. Jekyll and Hyde Barbecue. Jekyll and Hyde Barbecue makes barbecue so good, it'll put a smile on your face. And Kotai Radio Network is powered by KBack.Rocks. Rock radio the way rock radio should be. Go to KBackRadio.com and listen today.